Hello, I'm student meteorologist Robert Zott, and this is your current look at our weather outside right now. You can see it is 85 degrees and partly cloudy with a wind from the south-southeast at 7 miles per hour. You can see some clouds back here a little bit with us, but not too terrible to talk about with us, with a wind from the south-southeast at 7 miles per hour. So let's look at these temperatures, though. You can see it is quite hot for most of us right now, with a wind not really helping us out too much. 85 degrees in Tallahassee, 81 in Apalachicola. So honestly, a little bit on the hot side for us, but again, it is still kind of waning in the summer season, so not terrible. Looking at our satellite and radar, you can see we have some of these storms coming up on the eastern side of our viewing area, but nothing too terribly bad for us here in Tallahassee. The main story for the night is Hurricane Delta. You can see that it is a Category 2 hurricane right now making landfall potentially near the area where we had Hurricane Laura make landfall. So that is a situation that could get bad for them right now. We're going to need to watch this storm and see what impacts it could have. Our prayers are out for all of those in southwestern Louisiana right now. And here are our headlines. You can see right now summer-like weather. We have Hurricane Delta making landfall and cool weather in sight. All of this coming up next on your edition of FSU Weather. Wow.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Robert. I'm student meteorologist Dave Stoltz, and welcome to FSU Weather Friday edition. And like Robert was pointing out, is that we have Hurricane Delta about to make landfall here in south part of Louisiana, right near where Hurricane Laura made landfall not too long ago. And so there's a lot of rain associated with Hurricane Delta here. You can see this rain wrapping around counterclockwise motion around this low pressure system that has 105 mile an hour winds currently and moving to the northeast, I believe, at 17 miles per hour. So the storm's not going to stick around. There will be some flooding, but it won't be catastrophic flooding. So the storm will continue to trek up into the Tennessee Valley and be out of here in the next 24 to 36 hours. But until then, there's going to be a lot of rain, and there's potential for flooding, storm surge. So be prepared, and you should already evacuate if so. All right, Robert, what do you have for us next?
Thank you for that, David. And we're going to have technical difficulties right now, but right now we can see that we do have some watches and warnings in place for our western part of the area right now. You can see we have nothing over here for us in Florida, but towards our western side we have some hurricane warnings and watches in place, particularly also a flash flood watch, which should be of note for those in Mississippi going up into Arkansas, with the extra parts of the remnants, I should say, of Hurricane Delta. So right now you can see we have a slight risk over here towards most of the area. After we have Hurricane Delta moving in, it would mostly affect New Orleans right now. However, we could see some of that moving up towards the Mississippi, Alabama area. So you're going to need to watch, maybe have your radio transmitters on, anything that you could have for severe weather, because we could have a severe weather situation right now over into the weekend. So, and as you can see, it moves into the Alabama and Mississippi area, as I was saying. So looking at the air mass, though, with this storm, it is very wet. You can see going over towards Miami, you can see 73 degrees, 73 in Orlando. All this is coming in because we have all this Gulf moisture coming in and just sort of making our air very thick, very sort of muggy for us. And that is sort of being said for most of the area towards our west, too, where we have in New Orleans, it is 74. Jackson, it is 71, 66 in Shreveport, and 62 in Little Rock. So most of the area up even into the northern part of the Deep South, we were seeing very muggy, very, I would say, unbearable coming from Texas conditions for most of us. But honestly, conditions that are not that great for us right now, but they will sort of pass as we see Hurricane Delta moving out of the region. And this moisture forecast, you can see that we have these outer bands of Hurricane Delta moving out of the region right now, and this dry air coming in behind as we go into the Sunday, later parts of Sunday. But for Tallahassee and most of Montgomery and Jackson, you can see that we have all this very moist air coming in as a result of Hurricane Delta, but behind it, dry air, so we'll get a little bit of relief. Looking at tonight's forecast, you can see it is going to be temperate for most areas, a little bit on the warm side for tonight, though. You can see that it's 75 in Tallahassee, 73 in Montgomery, 77 in Tampa, and 80 degrees in Miami for our low tonight. 80 degrees, man, that's not fun. You can see up to 68 in Atlanta and 70 in Tupelo, so not terribly bad for most of us. But again, it's not a good night because I'd honestly rather see these as our high temperatures, not our low temperatures. And for tomorrow's forecast, you can see it is going to be a little bit on the warmer side, all the way up to, 89 degrees in Tampa, 87 in Miami, and 88 in Key West. So for most of us, it's going to be a hot day, but I'm going to pass it off to David for a look at some more of our weather.
All right, thank you, Robert. Yeah, we're going to take a closer look here at the state of Florida. It's a beautiful state, isn't it? Especially if you live here during the wintertime. It's mild, it's not too hot, but during the summer it gets a little toasty. And as you can see, temperatures currently around the Florida Peninsula, 85 degrees here in Tallahassee. It's on the warm side as you go down the peninsula. Tampa at 91, and where there's clouds and showers, you can see the temperature difference, 77 here in Fort Myers versus that 91 in Tampa. And so there's your muggy meter, and those faces do not look happy on this map. Wow, this is due to all the high dew points because of Hurricane Delta, bringing that really thick, moist air from the tropics, and hopefully this gets taken out of here soon because it's fall. We want fall temperatures. And so around the southeast, you can see there are some fall temperatures, kind of. So Little Rock here at 69 degrees, and up in the mountains of North Carolina near Charlotte, 68 degrees. But when you come down here to Florida, it is still on the hot side. And here's showers moving up the peninsula, pretty much from south to north, maybe a little bit north-northwest trajectory, but they are coming up. And where you're under a shower, your temperature will be lower. And these are going to be scattered about probably for the weekend as Delta slowly moves off to the north, and eventually all this moisture and shower activity will go along. And here's South Florida. They have showers coming out of the southeast to the northwest, and they're just scattered about. Nothing severe in Florida. Nothing severe to worry about. And here's Central Florida, Orlando area. Just south of Orlando, it's clear, but you can see the shower activity north of there is a little bit more widespread. And so tonight's lows around the peninsula, 73 degrees up here in Pensacola. And as you go down the peninsula, obviously, temperatures do get on the more warmer side as you get closer to where the dew points are higher. Tomorrow's forecast for the peninsula of Florida, you can see anywhere from the upper 80s to the low 80s up in North Florida, where we will have a little bit more cloud cover because of Hurricane Delta making landfall in Louisiana. I'm going to take a really quick around the state. Miami, you expect 50% chance of rain over the next 3 days, and highs in the upper 80s. And Tampa, you expect highs in the upper 80s, and 40% chance of rain pretty much every day for the next 3 days. In Jacksonville, mid-80s, cloudy, and basically a 50-60% chance of rain over the next 3 days. And here is Hurricane Delta making, this will be the futurecast, The storm will make its way north inland, weakening into a depression over the next 36 hours. And I'm going to hand things off to Robert now, who's going to talk about, what are you going to talk about, Robert?
I'm going to talk about the tropics. We're having this big story here with Hurricane Delta coming into the region. That is actually probably the biggest story for us because right now here in Tallahassee, we don't have too much to talk about. But Hurricane Delta is a serious situation for southwestern Louisiana and southeast Texas. So we are going to have a look at that and what the situation is here for the storm. So the reason why we're talking about Hurricane Delta is because this storm is quite powerful right now. It even got up to a Category 4 in the Gulf. And right now it is threatening the coast, as you can see here, with a Category 2 landfall in New Orleans as we speak, southwestern Louisiana as we speak right now. You can see the tropical storm force wind field here is quite large, and it's going all the way from New Orleans into the east, all the way to even Houston in the west. So all those areas are going to need to watch for tying down things, making sure that your property is safe, and even towards basically the exact area where Hurricane Laura made landfall, which is why we're sending our thoughts and prayers to that region, because that area is getting hit so hard again, and not only 1 month after, but right now you can see that they are getting hit by Category 2 force winds and storm surge, which is not exactly covered that much by the Saffir-Simpson wind scale, which is the categories we use. Storm surge is going to be a major threat with this storm, again, for that same area. So looking at Delta's projected path, you can see that we have going off towards our north, we have this storm going off towards maybe even the Tennessee Valley, but by that point it will be a tropical storm or even a remnant low. So it will give us some rain here in Tallahassee and even off into the northern areas of our country, but no more hurricane conditions for most of that area. And you can see this slight risk moving into the north as this storm goes across, and as Hurricane Delta continues to move into the north, you'll have a potential risk of some severe thunderstorms. And as we're looking towards the satellite radar for the entire situation here, you can see nothing much going on in the Atlantic. The main story again here tonight is with Hurricane Delta. So you can see right over here, this storm is basically just, right now, it's pummeling the area right now. So we are again watching out for that area right now. We have a few warnings in place. If you are in southwestern Louisiana or southeast Texas right now, make sure you are heeding all emergency services, you're staying indoors, making sure you're tied down, and you got all the things in your property safe. So we got well, actually not that much to talk about here for the tropics. Just make sure that you continue to heed tropical warnings. You continue to watch the Atlantic, because even though it's October, many of us think, well, we have a situation here where we don't have that many storms left. That's not true, because in an extremely active season like we have right now, back in 2005, it was a very similar season to this one, and we had storms going all the way into the winter, into January. So again, this is a situation in which that needs to be watched very carefully right now for us. So I'm going to pass things off to David to talk with the desk right now.
Yes, I am at the desk, and I was going to talk about the big things that are going on right now, and that's Hurricane Delta. And so you probably can't see me right now because we're having technical difficulties, but don't mind that. We will solve it. We're going to go to the wall and talk a little bit more about Hurricane Delta. And sorry about those technical difficulties, but yes, Hurricane Delta is making his or her way, however you want to get, what gender you want to give it. It's making landfall near Lake Charles, Louisiana, and will continue to track up into to the north and then to the northeast into the Tennessee Valley, where they could get enhanced rainfall and maybe some flooding in the Tennessee Valley and the mountains of the Appalachians. But currently, right now, people in Louisiana are dealing with this storm. It is a good thing. It's sort of a silver lining, if you want to say, that the storm did weaken and didn't keep its Category 4 status. It is a Category 2 with winds of 105 miles per hour, which is a blessing. So it's not going to be as bad as it could have been with this storm. But nonetheless, there's going to be flooding and wind damage, and there's still people with houses that have tarps on the roofs, and unfortunately, a lot of those will probably be torn off. And it's just, but the good thing is that this is probably the last storm we will see this hurricane season. I'm hoping, keep your fingers crossed, and that the hurricane season will be over. And Robert is going to talk more about the, I don't know, Robert, what are you going to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the local conditions here because we've talked so much about Hurricane Delta and the effects that it will have in southwestern Louisiana and southeast Texas. But we're also going to look at our conditions here after we actually look at the tropical warnings real quick, because this is still an important topic to talk about. You can see as we have towards our areas in Alexandria, and as we go down towards Lake Charles, we have this hurricane warning in effect, and even a tropical storm warning in effect for areas even as far east as New Orleans. So this is still an active situation here, a situation that needs to be watched and monitored. And if you are in that area, if you have family in that area, please make sure that you are heeding the situation and that you are heeding all government warnings. So, but we are going to look at our local conditions here. You can see that we have a condition right now of 85 degrees and partly cloudy. You can see this nice sun and sky behind me right here. So it's not that bad for us, but it is a little bit on the warmer side. As you can see, we have winds from the south-southeast at 7 miles per hour. And we have, if this will load, we are at Panama City Beach, excuse me. We're having a really fun time tonight. You can see we have our bright sun over there and a few clouds coming in. Some of this is associated with Hurricane Delta right now. But we're seeing no impacts in our area. Just a few storms and showers may be coming into the area as Hurricane Delta moves its way off towards the northeast. You can see our temperatures are quite sweltering right now. 85 in Tallahassee, 81 a little bit cooler down near Apalachicola, but as we look off towards Valdosta, it's even a little bit cooler, but even towards the south of Florida, it gets up towards 90, so not that fun for us right now. Looking at the satellite and radar, you can see that we have quite a few storms moving towards Dowling Park, Valdosta, Cross City. These storms are moving off towards the northwest, so we could see some added cloud cover and some storms moving into the area as we go into the night tonight, but nothing too bad or severe. Just something to watch out for, maybe a brief heavy downpour, maybe a few lightning strikes, nothing severe for us. And as we're going into the next 24 hours, you can see that we have quite a few storms here going off into the north and northwest. And then, as we see over here, this increased cloud cover and storm action towards Bainbridge and Quincy and ultimately Tallahassee is coming in because of Hurricane Delta. All of this moisture and cloud cover is associated with this storm, and that will ultimately increase our chances for rain as we go into the weekend. Moisture forecasts are looking here. You can see this storm moving off towards Jackson and Shreveport, ultimately up towards Nashville and Montgomery. By that point, it should ultimately be a tropical storm, tropical depression, and ultimately an extratropical storm that will be a remnant low. But that does not mean it will not affect our conditions. You can see this moisture moving off towards the northeast. It will ultimately bring some more showers and cloud cover to areas all the way from Atlanta to Tallahassee. So this will be something that you guys need to watch out for. Tonight is going to be clearing up in 72 degrees, wind from the south at 11 miles per hour. So not too bad for us tonight, but honestly, it's going to be something that we are going to have to watch out for as we go into the next few days, which is going to be rain and cloud cover. So you're going to need to enjoy tonight's weather before we see all these storms starting to come in. And you can see that we have conditions for most of the area, 72, 75, 76. Tonight's forecast is going to be pretty nice for most of us, but honestly, it's going to get quite hot into tomorrow. It's going to be 83, 84 in Monticello, 84 in Thomasville. So for most of us, it's going to get into the hot and muggy conditions. So we're going to need to keep watching as we see all these risks coming in for us. And our look ahead is going to be pretty rainy and pretty cloud covery into the 80s for most of us. So now I'm going to pass stuff to David for a look at the National.
I'll tell you what, our weather's going to look better there next week. Looking at the forecast ahead, they've been talking so much about Florida and Southeast and Hurricane Delta. We want to talk a little bit about the rest of the country, what's going on. We don't want to let them feel neglected. Here you can see Hurricane Delta making landfall, and here's a stationary front that's giving us moisture and shower activity. And this is like peripheral effects of Delta. It's not direct impacts. We will have cloudy and enhanced shower activity over the next tomorrow, this weekend. We'll have enhanced showers and storms, but it'll clear out by next week. And here you see the southeast stationary front, Hurricane Delta down here. And northeast is dealing actually with some possible severe weather as there's a front moving up through there. I'm going to take a look at the northeast here, and you can see these showers and storms up here associated with a front and probably a low pressure system up in Canada, and it's just enhancing their thunderstorm activity, and there's actually a slight risk of severe weather in parts of northern New York and Vermont and I believe New Hampshire. But you see down here in Pennsylvania, it's clear, and down here you can see these showers and clouds associated with that stationary front moving to the north and kind of connected to Hurricane Delta. Out here in the west, you can see some moisture, much needed moisture coming in to help deal with those fires and the dry conditions out there. And down here in Texas, you can see the slot of dry air right here. This is actually going to be our weather coming up next week as Hurricane Delta moves north. Hurricane Delta will swing this dry air into our area around the underside of the storm, and we'll have better weather. And looking around the nation, you see most of the dew points are high down here in the southeast. That's all due to that stationary front and Hurricane Delta pumping that moisture out of the Gulf. And over in the west, you can see the dew points are a lot lower, but there's some dew points are rising as some moisture is coming off the Pacific Ocean. Tonight's forecast lows around the country A little taste of winter up here. Not really, it's more like fall weather, but you can expect low 40s in the northern part of the country. And as you go down south, you expect lows in the mid 60s. And of course, Florida, the warm spot, mid and upper 70s for lows tonight. Future radar shows Hurricane Delta moving up into the Tennessee Valley, bringing showers and storm activity. Pretty much clear out here in the Midwest, and up in the Northwest, we have that moisture moving in, bringing them some rain showers and storms. You see the highs for tomorrow. Down in Florida, anywhere from mid to upper 80s. Northeast looks beautiful with mid 70s, and out west, 50s, 80s, depending on where you're at. Behind the front, 58, in front of the front, in the low 80s. All right, I'm going to hand things off to Robert now, who is going to look at the weekend weather for Florida.
Right, David. You can see we are going to have a look at the lifestyle forecast for us, so something more practical for you guys to see as we're going into the weekend. So, or if you're having a dinner date this weekend, you can see that it is going to be quite warm around 6 p.m. tonight. It's going to be 81 degrees at 6 p.m., but it is going to cool off towards, as you get towards 10 p.m., it is going to get down to 76 degrees. So you're going to have to wait a little bit for conditions to cool down to where it's a little bit more temperate, but nothing too bad for us as we go into the night. And our satellite and radar, you can see that looking at ultimately our storm conditions. We're going to have a slight risk for areas into Alabama and eastern Mississippi into Saturday. So something, as I said earlier, you're going to need to watch. Maybe have your weather radio, have all your conditions. This won't be a major severe weather event, but we could see some spin-up tornadoes potentially, and maybe some severe weather conditions. So with a hurricane or degenerating tropical storm, this is something you always need to watch about as we go into a situation where we have this situation moving off towards the northeast. For our dog walk forecast, though, you can see that it is going to be at 7 a.m., 74 degrees, and pretty nice for us right now. Into tomorrow, 9 a.m., it's going to be 76 degrees, and at 11 a.m., it will be 80. So you need to watch out as we get into the ultimate daytime, where it's going to be a little bit warmer, and we have a chance for some showers. So if you're going to walk your dog tomorrow, I always suggest maybe doing it around 7 to 9 a.m., just so you get before those storms and warmer conditions, so your dog's paws don't get too hot. Your game day forecast, it will be pleasant, 75 degrees at 7:30 p.m. when we kick off at Notre Dame Stadium in Big Bend, Indiana. So it will be clear conditions. It will be 71 degrees at halftime, and it will be all the way down to 62 when we are at the final conditions at 11:30 p.m. So it will be pretty good by the time that the game day ends. We'll have to see how FSU does, though, considering how well we've been doing this season. You can see we have Hurricane Delta moving off towards the northeast. Won't be much of a concern for them hurricane-wise, but again, we need to watch these conditions here. And you can see we're going to have a lot of wind flow with this storm. But ultimately, tomorrow's forecast will be pretty warm for most of the areas, except near where Hurricane Delta is going, where it will be a little bit cooler. So I will pass things off to David for one last look at our tropical conditions, since we are talking about Hurricane Delta so much.
Yes, let's talk about Hurricane Delta one more time. How about that? Yes. Hurricane Delta is making landfall currently. Looks like the eye wall is coming on shore there in southern Louisiana. And the winds were 105 miles per hour. It's moving at a good clip about to the northeast, I believe, at about 17 miles per hour. There is a lot of rain associated with Hurricane Delta. So anywhere along where the path of where the center of Hurricane Delta goes, there will be a lot of rainfall. I believe they're forecast to have 7 to 10 inches in parts of Louisiana up into southern Arkansas. But this storm is going to weaken rapidly once it's overland, and it'll make its way into the Tennessee Valley up here, and then give it some rain up there. But it'll be out of our hair in probably the next 36 to 48 hours. It is a fast mover, so there will not be too much rainfall. There will not be rainfall in feet, hopefully, as this storm moves off to the northeast at a good clip. And like Robert was referring to, there is a chance of spin-up tornadoes with tropical systems making landfall. So the Storm Prediction Center has issued a slight risk of severe weather here, right where Hurricane Delta is making landfall. And there is the chance it's general thunderstorms, and then there's just a marginal risk off to the east side of this storm, as that's where you have your wind flow coming onshore, which creates friction and can create spin-up tornadoes. And we're going to zoom in here on the projected path of Hurricane Delta, currently a Category 2 hurricane. Will move inland and will really quickly weaken once it gets overland. You see here 70 miles per hour on early Saturday morning, and then quickly becomes a depression and then will become a remnant low once it gets up into the Tennessee Valley. So we're going to look at the moderate risk. Actually, there's a slight risk of severe weather here for tomorrow. Yes, due to Hurricane Delta making landfall and being on the east side, it's going to enhance the severe thunderstorm risk across parts of, looks like west central Alabama and east central Mississippi, and there's marginal risk around there. Parts of the panhandle of Florida are under marginal risk, but probably will not see any severe weather, but there's always that chance. And tropical storm watches and warnings. See, there is a hurricane warning where Hurricane Delta is making landfall up to Alexandria, and peripheral, there are tropical storm warnings as well, as those winds will affect those in New Orleans, in Louisiana. And the storm will move off to the north-northeast. And here's your current winds. It looks like 29 in Houston, and there's none there. So anyways, I'm going to pass things off to the desk now with Robert, and he's going to talk about probably Hurricane Delta. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to be our main weather condition right now. It's going to be Hurricane Delta, and that's mostly what we're talking about because this is a fast mover and it will ultimately affect southwest Louisiana. But we are going to keep watching that area, keep sending our prayers out for that area, because this is an area that already has been heavily affected by the Hurricane Laura back in September. So this is an area that we need to watch out for, continue to make sure everyone is listening to all emergency conditions there and listening to our forecasters to make sure that everyone is ultimately prepared for this storm. And I'd like to apologize on behalf of the FSU weather team for some of the technical difficulties we have had tonight. We always like to bring the best forecast to you, so we are trying to improve our forecast every day. For our weather conditions right now, you can see that it is a little bit on the warmer side, a little bit on the muggier side, as we ultimately do have Hurricane Delta moving into our region. But again, it's going to be something that's not going to be hurricane conditions for us, but it will bring some maybe storm chances into the weekend. So you need to watch out and make sure you're watching the forecast, watching the radars. We might have some brief downpours that you may need to watch about. And as we are going into the next week, it's going to dry out a little bit, maybe still stay a little on the hot side, but we're going to be looking towards cooler weather, ultimately as we go later beyond that forecast. And as we watch it for the nation right now, nothing too terrible. We are starting to make our way into the early signs of winter here as we are making our way into mid-October. So we are going to make sure that we are keeping our eye on winter weather soon. Follow us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook at FSU Weather, and watch us live on YouTube every night during the week at 6 p.m. at FSU Weather. And make sure you follow us on Instagram. Send us your photos of the weather right now. Not too much to talk about, but honestly, we like to see any weather. We are weather nerds. So we thank you for tuning into this broadcast. We will have more updates for you as we go into next week. Make sure you tune in to us, same time, same place. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And with this, I sign off. I'm Robert Zott, FSU student meteorologist.